Welcome to the world of Unilock. This in-depth training video has been compiled to illustrate all the important facets of a complete backyard installation using Unilock Select pavers and our pre-built outdoor living features called Elements. Witness the incredible transformation that will take place on this basic home in only a few days. With Unilock Select pavers, you can design outdoor living spaces with style and distinction. And these next-generation pavers have features that go far beyond what traditional pavers can offer in both aesthetics and performance. Elements, introduced to the market exclusively by Unilock, are quickly becoming the rage in outdoor living. You'll be amazed at how well they are made. Unilock Elements are engineered and constructed in a controlled environment with custom-developed adhesives and quality UL-listed components. In addition to these benefits, Unilock Elements come with the same lifetime guarantee as Unilock pavers. You'll be impressed to see how these elements dramatically change the look and feel of your outdoor retreat, and how well they complement the color, texture, and style of the Unilock pavers in the patio. By using Unilock Elements, your project installation time will also be reduced. Now, let's take a close look at how this incredible transformation is accomplished. The key to a great project is planning. This project was designed with Google SketchUp, a three-dimensional software program that lets you design just about anything. This software is available from Google. Also, most Elements models can be downloaded from www.unilock.com to help you design your project. Good planning encompasses many things. First, make sure your base materials, Unilock pavers and Unilock Elements, are ordered several weeks in advance whenever possible. Second, prior to excavating, it is critical that you contact all utility locators for an exact location of any buried cables, gas lines, etc., to prevent any damage to buried lines. Begin by transferring the measurements, elevations, and locations from your plan to the building site. Use string, stakes, and marking paint to mark all important coordinates. Your string and marking paint should be fluorescent so that it can be easily seen. Make sure all lines and markings are square to any existing buildings or structures. Always double-check your measurements and locations. Mark the location of all structures, elements, paver areas, and gardens. Marking the garden areas will help you avoid unnecessary excavation. Staging the product is also an important part of planning. Prior to moving material around, it is a good idea to inspect the pavers to make sure that the material is exactly what you ordered. Placing your materials in easily accessible locations will save you time and energy. After staging all your materials, you can begin the sod removal and excavation. For the planting areas, it is only necessary to remove the sod so that you can conserve topsoil. The purpose of excavation is to remove any heavy clay soils and subsoils, which can hold water that cause frost lifting in cold climates. We recommend a minimum of 6 inches of gravel base below any pavers or Elements units. Depending on the site conditions, this could vary plus or minus 3 inches. Refer to your Unilock Tech Guide for specific depth recommendations. Never construct anything on loose fill or in areas that will not drain. Setting up a laser level will assist you in establishing the proper amount of excavation. Depending on the grade of a property, you may need to excavate deeper in some areas and very little in others. It's important that all topsoil is removed down to the subsoil. Once your excavation is down to the required depth, it's a good idea to use a ramming compactor, sometimes referred to as a jumping jack, to recompact any subsoil that may have been disturbed during the excavation process. This will also remove any air pockets or voids that will later result in settling. The smoothed-out surface will make it easier to paint markings for the placement of elements. Elements can be installed on a compacted gravel base. However, We do recommend that larger and taller units, such as the fireplace, be placed on a poured concrete pad. Check your plans for location and elevation to confirm placement of the fireplace, which the main layout of this patio is centered on. The height of the pad should be determined by using the laser level or a string line and line level. Take your time. The concrete pads must be set at the right height. After all concrete pads have been poured and stripped, spread gravel in all areas where pavers will be installed. Transporting gravel into a backyard can sometimes be a daunting task. Whenever possible, plan an access for gravel and cement trucks to dump the gravel close to where you need it. The type of gravel we recommend is graded 3/4-inch crusher run gravel, which is typically the same gravel-based material approved for roadwork. This type of gravel allows for the best drainage, compaction, and load-bearing capacity. Use the ramming compactor to make the area solid. Several passes may be required to achieve full compaction. Double-check to make sure that the base is sloped correctly and that there are no dips or bumps greater than a 1/2 inch. Screeding the bedding sand over the base is the next crucial step in paver installation. The purpose of the bedding sand is to seat the pavers and to allow a buffer for final compaction. This final compaction will make the surface of your installation very smooth. Screeding is accomplished with a couple of very basic tools. We recommend a 3/4-inch diameter metal pipe as the screed guide and a straight 2x4 as the screed board. Check the straightness of the board by looking down the edge to see if there are any irregularities. These pipes must lay directly on the gravel base. Therefore, it's very important to establish your base heights accurately to avoid extra work. The height of the pipe should be at an elevation that would put the paver approximately 3/8 of an inch higher than the required final height. This will allow for the final compaction of the pavers. The bedding sand must be a clean, coarse concrete sand. Place the sand between the screed guides and rake out the sand to conform to the general grade. Using the straight 2x4 board, screed the sand down the pipe rails. You will immediately see how smooth this surface becomes. Once one area has been screeded, you can slide the pipes down further to complete the next section. As you move the pipes along, or when completely removing the pipe, you will be left with a small groove in the sand, which will need to be filled. Simply take a shovelful of sand and spread it into the groove. With a small hand trowel, you can smooth the sand to the screeded surface. Avoid walking on the screeded surface. In any areas where you may have added extra sand, you should hand tamp the sand in those spots and then re-screed. The next step is laying the pavers. This may seem like a large part of the work, but actually it moves along quite quickly, especially if it is well planned out. In this project, the contractor is installing Umbriano and Copthorn. The Copthorn will match the Copthorn used as accents in the elements. Referring back to the plan often will ensure that you start at the right location and stay on course with the pattern and the design. The Umbriano paver is comprised of several sizes that can be laid in a specific pattern or in a random pattern. Because it is the larger component and the larger portion of the job, it is laid first. Another good reason to start with the Umbriano is that it is the thicker of the two stones. Once it is laid, it will be easier to lay the Copthorn in between, which is 3/8 of an inch thinner. You'll notice that the Umbriano has a 0 bevel edge. These sharp edges are designed to give you a very contemporary and sophisticated look. Care must be taken not to bump these paver edges against each other, which will cause chipping. Likewise, when you are installing Umbriano pavers, make sure you slide the sides of the stone together before placing them on the bedding sand. Sliding a paver closer after it is on the sand does not work very well and will result in uneven gaps. As you are laying the stones, attention must be paid to the string lines so that the pavers remain straight. Avoid walking on the screeded surface. Always walk on the pavers that have just been laid. As you approach the pipe grooves that could not be accessed for filling earlier, you can now fill and trowel them smooth. Staging pavers for the person laying the stones is very important. Putting the Umbriano on edge makes sorting and grabbing much easier and prevents the face of the stone from getting scuffed. Minor adjustments in alignment can be made with the paver alignment tool. Screwdrivers can also be used, but in some cases this is difficult. The paver alignment tool also has a blade on it that minimizes the risk of pinching the edges of the stone. Once the Umbriano has been completely laid in place, you may need to cut around certain objects in order to facilitate the border stone, or soldier course, which in this case is copthorn. A small accent of Unilock's legendary Brussels block was also added as an additional border in the center pattern to give the appearance of a carpet design. The easiest way to cut in a soldier course or a border is to mark the distance on the stone with a pencil. Then, using a chalk line, snap the whole line. The advantage with a larger stone like Umbriano is that it can be easily cut in place. A gas-powered masonry saw with a diamond blade is the most efficient method, but will create dust if you cut it dry. If you cut it wet, you may end up with a white slurry on the stone, which is difficult to clean up unless it is washed off immediately after cutting. Whether you are cutting wet or dry, you must wear NIOSH-approved protective gear at all times. With the proper diamond blade, table saws can be used to cut pavers, wet or dry. A suction unit can be added to the dry cutter that will draw in most of the dust. Keep in mind, by using elements, the majority of the assembly work and cutting was done off-site, minimizing your labor and the amount of dust created on site. The installation of the copthorn accents will require a slight adjustment to the bedding course thickness. This is simply done by adding a small amount of sand to the area and then screeding it with a pre-cut screed board. Because this area is like a channel, the contractor has made a small board that is notched on both ends. Once the adjustment in the bedding course has been made, the copthorn pavers can be installed. In any areas where pavers abut grass or gardens, a plastic or aluminum edge restraint should be used to prevent lateral movement of the pavers into the garden. These edge restraints are spiked into place using 12-inch galvanized spiral nails. Once all the pavers have been cut and the edges are secured, topsoil can be added to the gardens and then planted. It's almost time for the final compaction. But before it can be started, the entire area must be swept clean of debris and/or blown off with a leaf blower. The area must also be inspected at this point for line straightness, color blending if your stone is a blend, and the spacing between stones in areas where there are a lot of cuts or fans. After adjusting spacing, a small amount of sand can be put in these areas to prevent shifting of the pattern. One very important note: do not spread sand on the surface prior to compacting. This will prevent the full flattening of the surface and possibly scuff the pavers as well. On the first compaction pass, compact pavers with no sand in the joints. Initially, the only sand that should be swept into any joints is where curvilinear patterns have caused the pavers to fan out, creating a larger joint. Sweeping sand into these areas will help prevent shifting from the compactor. The nature of Umbriano's surface is such that a protective membrane should be attached to the bottom of the compactor to prevent scuffing of the surface. These pads are a good investment, and they are available for almost every style of compactor. Compacting should always be done immediately after the pavers have been installed, and not a couple of weeks later. If you wait too long, the pavers will settle into the sand their own way, or rain may cause the sand to shift. As a result, your final compaction will not have the positive outcome that you would like it to have. Compacting accomplishes a couple of things. First, it sets the pavers into the sand, forcing sand up between the joints, creating a very solid lockup between adjacent pavers. Secondly, it flattens the surface by leveling each and every stone to its neighboring stone. A minimum of 3 passes is recommended, once in each direction and once diagonally. Corners and tight areas must be hand-tapped. Do not do the final compaction of the pavers if the bedding course is saturated with water from a heavy rain. Instead, wait a day and then compact. After the final compaction is complete, sand may be swept into the joints to lock up the pavers. The sand can be swept in dry, or the sand can be made wet, grouted in like tile grout using an industrial floor squeegee. The weather usually determines which method you use. Never leave jointing sand sitting on the surface for more than a day. Naturally occurring salts in the sand can sometimes stain the stone. Unilock recommends that you use Unilock polymeric sand in almost all situations. Alternatively, you can also use standard or colored joint sand in combination with an application of Unilock sealer. Applying sealer will enhance the color of the pavers, giving them a deeper color and in some cases a slight shine. In some situations, however, you may choose not to seal the pavers so that the original color, look, and feel is maintained. After the project has been completed, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing family and friends spending time together, enjoying a lifetime of beautiful living. For hundreds of great design ideas and more information about Unilock's next generation pavers, visit www.unilock.com.